All right, Matt Hauswirth here with me. And Matt, it's one of those things, we were talking about it, that this far into training camp, I don't think I've ever seen this few questions about football. We laugh about it, but it's understandable because there's just been so much going on, whether or not they'll even play. I think they will, but neither one of us is a scientist, and we'll get to that in a minute. But again, there's just been so many storylines with this team, the pausing in practices a couple times now. Waiting for this Friday to see if any more guys opt out when the NCAA ruling comes down. It's one of those things where I think that if we were asking any more questions about the X's and O's, it might be a little bit weird. We'll get into some of those things for the fans that do want to know about this year's team. But, man, what a weird offseason.
Yeah, we could have never envisioned this. But, I think it's good to see that at least a few of these major conferences are playing college football. And, we're lucky enough that the ACC is one of them. And, I don't think you and I could probably agree on this. Syracuse isn't the team that the ACC needs to worry about. They got the testing protocols in place. John Wildhack just last week saying it's going to be 3 times a week now during game weeks. And then, you look at the rest of the ACC, first opponent, North Carolina. You got clusters of coronavirus going around. And, who knows if that game's even played that first week of September. So I think right now we're all just kind of waiting on pins and needles, just hoping that everything goes well. But, you can't really hope with science. You have to, obviously do the right things in society and make sure it goes forward. So hopefully we are talking about Syracuse football as well.
No kidding. And I'll say this, too. It amazes me that some of these schools like North Carolina didn't require any tests for students coming back and then didn't test them when they came back. What did you think was going to happen? Of course there's going to be clusters of cases. Oh, my goodness.
And we certainly feel for happen all along.
Right, exactly. And obviously you feel for the people. We wish them the best that are battling it, but it's just like, my goodness, why didn't you test? You could have avoided probably a lot of those cases. And I'll say this, though, it could be an unintended consequence. North Carolina, you mentioning already going remote for everything. But I bet you those student athletes stay there. Right. And there is a much less chance that any of them will have, contracted the virus because the rest of the student body will be online. It could be for the schools that aren't taking the same precautions as SU. And I think, honestly, I think SU is nailing it with their protocol. And Dino said, they dropped the ball. They didn't quite communicate how they're going to do it. But now that that's cleaned up, like you said, 3 tests a week, I think they're nailing it. This could, before we get into actual X's and O's talk, be one of those things that actually enables a school like North Carolina to play. The kickoffs in 24 days, so a little more than 3 weeks, and they're going to be the only people up there are going to be the athletes. It could be something that actually somehow unintentionally works out.
I could see that happening. I was, looking at a few tweets yesterday that, a few people had ideas where maybe you isolate just the student athletes. They learn in their own side of the campus. The rest of the student body learns on the rest of the campus. That way you kind of separate them and they're not on top of each other. They're not touching the same things. They're not breathing the same air. And it's unfortunate that you have to do that. But in this day and age, that's what you have to do if you want to play sports, because this thing is going to spread like wildfire. And God forbid, a coach gets it who's a little bit older, who has a couple of underlying conditions. God forbid their parents get it, or, aunt and uncle. And that's where you really, worry, because it's not the student athletes that we're worried about. It's the rest of the people in their lives that they come in contact with.
Absolutely. Yeah. Man, there's just so many simple precautions that can be taken here that it appears so many people don't want to take. I want to really quick before we get into the positions. I love what Dino Babers said on Monday. He said that in New York State, he has no problem walking around with his masks on and then calling a dime on anybody who's not wearing their mask. I think we should have Dino be the mask enforcer of Syracuse.
That would be, if he tells you to do something, you better do it. I think a lot of his players would say the same thing, though. But, man, he grew up in a military-style family. He's the type of guy, when he tells you to do something, I think everybody would go ahead and do it. He would be the first person I would think of to make sure everybody wore a mask.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so let's hope, I don't want to even say assume, but let's pretend to hope, whatever it is, that September 12th, Syracuse is starting that season at North Carolina, student list for 3+ weeks by that point, hopefully erasing some potential hazards. Hopefully they're testing more than the ACC minimum of once per week. I think, and I know there's a few different keys, but if we're talking about positions, you and I share this belief that in a lot of ways it comes down to the quarterback. Yeah. Tommy DeVito, you can make the argument, didn't have protection last year. And then when he got the protection, against Duke and things like that, he played better. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing for DeVito is going to be with this unique offseason we had, how much does he get to work with Sterling Gilbert? And how much can Sterling work out some of the things in his game, have him make quicker decisions, have him maybe even have a better presence, just develop him. I think that's the key to DeVito making that step. We got to remember he's still a redshirt sophomore last year. Yeah. I think everybody had higher hopes than what he did, but I don't know that that's all on him. I think that's the biggest key, is to see how much Sterling Gilbert and Tommy can gel together and how he makes that next step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and they can only go up from last season, right? I think Sterling Gilbert brings with him so much expertise in crafting a quarterback, and that is so important, especially in this college game. It's not even about this fast-paced up-tempo offense anymore, because it seems like every college football team runs that kind of offense, but it's about the types of coaches you put into place to make sure your players are successful on the football field. And I think, back when they hired Sterling Gilbert, that Dino Babers knocked this one out of the park. I mean, this is a guy who came from another head coaching job to come and be a position coach at a Power 5 school. I think he's going to work wonders with Tommy DeVito. And we look at the video that the university is supplying us over these last few weeks, and he looks crisp. He looks like he's got the touch on the ball. I mean, I know a lot of the receivers were always saying that he threw it 100 miles an hour. He kind of had a fastball that was all he had, but it seems like now he's got a little bit more touch on it. Obviously, as time goes on, his third or fourth year in the system now. He's going to build more muscle mass, and he's going to look a little bit more built out there. But obviously, you look at this offensive line. Aaron Service is the anchor. He's the guy that everyone's going to listen to. The next guy that I'm really interested to see take a step up is Matthew Bergeron, because he came on late last year and showed some promise as a true freshman. You're like, wow, this kid's pretty good. And so I'd really like to see him take that next step this year. That's why, this season's so important for so many players to show what they can do in their next season.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head with the offensive line. Bergeron being put in the starting lineup was coinciding with that Duke game, and it allowed Service to shift over. And this is the easiest, maybe the dumbest point you can make, most obvious point. But they got to keep DeVito healthy.
Yeah.
You've got Rex Culpepper, who's a veteran guy behind him, and you got David Summers, who's a redshirt freshman, and some true freshmen, and so it gets a little bit murky after that. So that line, like you said, much improved. It's got to protect DeVito. Let's move on to the skill positions: running backs, receivers, tight ends, all that good stuff. I look at it. I think wide receiver is probably the deepest unit in the team. Athletes everywhere, big bodies. I like what they bring to the table. I think when you look at the running backs, it's going to be interesting. It's Abdul Adams' time, so to speak, right? This is his year. But, man, I mean, you're going to see Jawar Jordan, Jarvion Howard. Like, how do you not give those guys the ball? And that's going to be an interesting thing. The tight ends will always, Hackett's the guy, but there's some guys that can obviously rotate in. But I think if you want to kind of summarize it, I think wide receiver is the deepest. You can throw it to any of those guys, and they're going to come down with it. And DeVito's developing that trust. Obviously, you lose Tristan, but I think there's guys there that are ready to step up. Taj Harris is one of the first to come to mind. And tight end, I think it'll be fine. I think running back's going to be the interesting dynamic where I think they'll be successful, but it'll be really interesting to see how they split up those snaps between some really, really talented guys.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of Syracuse fans were excited about to see this up-tempo offense when Dino Babers did arrive 4 years ago was that they were going to throw the ball down the field constantly. But I think one of the bigger surprises with his offense is that, how often he's run the football, and he does it quite often. He chooses to run, almost as much as he decides to throw the ball. And, you look at somebody like Abdul Adams, he's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got the fanfare. He was a four-star recruit coming out of high school. He played at Oklahoma. He's been on the big stages. He knows what this is all about. This is his time to shine. He's a senior. He transferred here for this opportunity, and he's got to seize this opportunity. Jawar Jordan, really speedy type of running back. I'd expect a big year out of him as well. And then Jarvion Howard, that's the guy who's just going to punch you in the face and punch it in from the goal line, and you got to have a running back like him. It goes back to the time when at the Pitt game when I was on the road with Pitt and he knocked that guy's helmet off with a stiff arm. Do you remember that photo?
Oh, I remember that photo, and I think we try to use that video anytime we can.
Yeah, that was and it's always great to throw that into the Pitt-Syracuse rivalry. But that was that's what I think of when I think of Jarvion Howard. He's a great running back, young running back as well. But Taj Harris is the one guy I'm looking at with this receivers group. Obviously, he's got the home run ability with the speed. I mean, he could blaze past everybody. But I'm also wondering what the personality dynamic is like, because there were a few times, like, we talked about last year where him and Tommy got into it. Tommy was trying to settle him down and Taj, barking at him a little bit. The coaches had to come over and settle him down. So I wonder if this is something that Taj has worked on in the offseason. I'm sure the coach has gotten his ear, like, listen, man, like, you have everything that we want out of a wide receiver. We just need you to keep your head a little bit. So hopefully, if we do see them play this year, that he is able, when things don't go well, that he can kind of keep his head a little bit.
Yeah, Matt, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And one of those things, I think we talked about this back when we were still in the same office together at the same time. When you'd see that on the sidelines, and we saw it multiple games where I was on the field and then games where you were on the field, of course, as well. I hadn't seen something like that. I'm sure it happens more than we see it, but I hadn't seen something like that since the 2011 season when the wheels kind of fell off at the end. You never like to see that, but like you said, I hope it works out. So I think that kind of wraps on the offense. The defense is it's a more difficult thing to talk about. We can and we will, but you don't entirely know what it's going to look like. And we know the scheme, the 3-3-5, and Tony White obviously is an awesome hire. He brings great credentials to the table, and it's a really, again, great hire by Coach Babers. And I like that Coach made the really tough moves to make. It's not easy to let somebody go. It's not easy to shift people around that are your family. But kudos to him because he made the moves he had to make after last year's 5-7 season. So I'm thinking, the defense is going to be a lot different than we've seen the last couple of years. You're going to see guys in different places, different philosophies. And, it's one of those things where hopefully they can bounce back. It was great in 2018, but maybe you can make the argument now that was more about the personnel. I mean, it's hard to say, but it's going to be really interesting. And I think I'm looking for the defense to rebound. And we can talk about position by position, but overall, I think they're going to be a much more sound unit this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the defense should be much better as well. And obviously it's led first and foremost by Cisco. I mean, that guy is, he looks like an NFL player right now. You put him, in a defensive backfield for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he'd be making plays all over the field. But it's great to have somebody like that at your disposal. I think the one player, actually, there's two players that I'm really looking at this year that I think could make a really big impact. Josh Black on the defensive line. I mean, obviously he's an athletic freak. Anytime The Rock tweets back at you, that's when you know things are going well. And he's just an absolute beast. I would expect him to almost kind of fill in that Alton Robinson void a little bit and get after the quarterback. Maybe even Kendall Coleman as well. Fill that void. But another one I'm looking at is Michael Jones, because this was remember, he signed a couple of years ago, and he was one of the biggest recruits Dino Babers has ever signed. A 4-star linebacker at IMG Academy in Florida. I mean, that's like one of the best prep schools in the country. This is a young man who's got everything you want in a linebacker, middle linebacker. I remember seeing him the first practice inside the indoor facility, and he was so vocal out there yelling orders to everybody. And it was almost like we were watching this young man mature in front of our very own eyes. And it's really interesting to see what he can do this first year, starting at that middle linebacker position, because we know that's almost kind of like the quarterback of the defense. That's probably Cisco's role this year, but I would say Michael Jones and Josh Black are the two that could really have big seasons for this defense, under new direction.
You hit on a point that I wasn't really going to think about talking about, but I've thought it for such a long time. Everybody likes to look at, okay, well, Babers has coached 4 years. That means it's all his guys. Okay, results, right now. Mm-hmm. Okay, technically true. Everybody there is his guy now. But think about that. That means guys like Michael Jones they were still young, and he's still young. Mm-hmm. But they're not, you're in college football, your guys are still going to be the upperclassmen, the senior leaders, right? And so so now we get to see some of those great recruiting wins that we have covered from Coach Babers, really see those start to blossom. I'm not saying that they're instantly going to be better. Of course not. I mean, you hope, but it's not automatic. But I mean, you brought it up with Jones. I mean, this is a guy, one of those big wins for Babers. There's been a few other ones as well. I mean, at any position really. And in a few years, we'll be saying this about Deuce Chestnut too. You know, now we get to see the fruits of Babers' labor because, yeah, his first class, okay, those guys are upperclassmen now. But then how about the guys from that 2018 10-win season? Okay, they're going to be sophomores now, right? So maybe they're going to be contributing more and more is what I'm trying to say. So I think that's a really big thing. And, you know, obviously Andre Cisco's the guy in the secondary. I love what Trill Williams said about him last week. He said, you know, he's the kind of leader. First of all, he's already a leader of the team as a junior, which is great. He's the kind of leader that when there's an issue or he can tell something's bothering him, he goes over and talks to the player about it. He's not, you know, some leaders, and it's fine, they yell, and that's great. I'm sure he yells. But, like, Trill was saying he makes them more comfortable. And I just think that, again, I could pair it with what you said. Obviously, Josh Black is huge. So, you know, the linebacker role is big now in this new scheme. But I just think, you know, there's enough talent now that have been coming through. Babers recruits are there now. They're getting older. They're getting better. And now it's that chance, okay, they get to start over essentially because it's a whole new scheme. It's a whole new ball game. And Tony White comes in with a clean slate. He doesn't have his favorites. He doesn't have his guys. I mean, obviously, Andre Cisco, Josh Black, those guys are everybody's favorites.
Yeah.
But now let's see, you know, who steps up. Let's see, you know, some of those guys have been waiting for their chance, you know, and see what they can do, whether you're talking about the guys that are being recruited, you know, by Babers as underclassmen or some of those guys that have been around a while that were just a little bit behind the depth chart. And I think that's one of the most exciting parts of any new season. I think it's really, really going to be a big thing for the defense this year.
Absolutely. You know, I still remember the night Brian Ward was fired. I was anchoring. It was a Sunday night, you know, the former defensive coordinator. And it was unbelievable because it was earlier in the season, they were singing his praises going into the year and just how the defense was coming together. And, man, that 2018 defense was just so rock solid. And then, you know, it's crazy how things changed so quickly. But it's always good to embrace a new style of defense, especially one that has never really been run at Syracuse, not even a recent memory. This 3-3-5 stack defense is so interesting. And when I covered it at West Virginia.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah, and that's the defense that Jeff Castile ran at West Virginia. That 3-3-5. It's based on making sure you have a ton of DBs in coverage. So you're almost defending against the pass. You're not putting as many guys on the line to get to the quarterback. You're hopeful that they get to the quarterback, but for the most part, you're looking for these guys to defend the pass, to pick off passes. And when you have DBs like Syracuse has, this is a perfect defense for them. I mean, we're not even mentioning Ife Melifonwu, who's also a very good cornerback. And Eric Coley, this is his time to shine, the Fayetteville Manlius alum. And, you know, this is a young man that we saw pick off a pass last year. He can do it. And I'm really interested to see how this defensive back rotation, how they fly around the field, because those linebackers as well, these are the type of linebackers you want to have in a 3-3-5 defense. You want to have guys that aren't so bulky. They almost maybe look like safeties a little bit because they can drop back into coverage and they can defend against the pass. Michael Jones isn't like a big, stocky guy. He's a little bit more quick. Lee Kabagba, he was another, four-star kid out of North Carolina, decided Syracuse over a bunch of North Carolina schools. He's a little bit more slender, can drop back into coverage, defend against those passes. And I think that's a real recipe for this defense to succeed in year one.
Definitely. And the guy like Juan Wallace in there too. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And I'm glad you went there because I was literally about to ask you about that, how it works out. You and I, we talked about it off camera. We're going to do our season predictions a little closer to the season. Let's make sure we still have a season to predict. We obviously want that more than anything because it makes our job a hell of a lot more fun. But we're not going to go there just yet with about, I don't know, what did I say earlier, 24, 25 days until the season opener. Let's wait till September 1 to feel pretty good. And going back to her point, I do think we'll see it because I think the plan is there. And I think that, I would encourage fans to not be discouraged when you see news of campuses going remote only because of what we said earlier. Could have that unintended consequence of actually making it a little bit more safer. I shouldn't say that's unintended, but it could actually make it safer for athletes that remain on campus. Not that every school will do that, but I think most will. So Yeah. Any final thoughts, Maddie?
Yeah, I obviously none of us saw this coming, but I remember, first couple of weeks, we stopped by camp and saw these guys back in March, and it was like, I just felt like things were changing from, the down year we saw last year, and still, I mean, I know everybody's kind of down on that team last year and just how Tommy couldn't get the ball out because he had zero time and didn't really improvise much. I mean, all these guys were learning. I mean, there's a lot of. I know it's like college football. You want to see results right now. But I think in reality, we need to understand that Syracuse is not an Alabama or an Auburn. Syracuse is a program that develops these kids. You get a lot of 2- and 3-star guys that take time to develop. And, you saw it with Eric Dungy a couple of years ago. It took time for him to develop. But towards the end, man, he was dynamite. So I think, fans just need to wait it out. Things are going to obviously be better, I think, starting this year. And hopefully, the season goes off without a hitch. I think their testing protocols are top-notch. I hope the rest of the ACC can follow what Syracuse has set in place because, man, they have it figured out. The rest of the schools, who the heck knows? Hopefully they figure it out as well so we can all enjoy the sport we love.
No question about that. I second that. And I just think like you said, I think they'll bounce back this year as a general thought, not getting too into the nitty-gritty of it. But I think that Coach Babers is the X factor. I mean, that's a guy he's just a leader. And we could talk about the stuff that we see, the post-game speeches, but the stuff behind the scenes that we don't see, that, when you talk to him, he's just, how do you not – I mean, you love that guy. How do you not want to run through a wall for that guy? And I think, okay, he's going to right the ship, and get things back to where, they want him to be. So it'll be fun to see. And here's hoping that in about 2 weeks, Matt, we do our season prediction, right?
Everything's up in the air at this point. Actually, one more thing I was going to mention, Chris Blake, the offensive lineman transfer from Florida, he still doesn't know what his eligibility is. The NCAA hasn't said anything.
What is going on with that? Wait,
I mean, Alan Griffin, luckily, we found out today.
Yeah.
But
totally.
What's going on with him?
And I'm glad you brought that up because, we've had fans on social media tweet at both of us about it. And it's just like, there's no rhyme or reason to what the NCAA does. The kid's from Pennsylvania. He leaves a hotspot state in Florida to come closer to home in a pandemic. Like, what is there to not – how do you not give the guy immediate eligibility? Yeah. It's just – it really, to me, highlights what is the NCAA, what everybody criticizes about it. There's no consistency.
No, none. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're thinking. I mean, they haven't really given college football much direction. I feel like it's just kind of the Power 5 conferences that are making decisions on their own. And, I mean, at this point, the NCAA, who knows if they'll even be around in 10 years, But man, I hope that Chris Blake can play because this is a big fella who can really help this offensive line. And if he's cleared to go, I mean, he's practicing with him. So hopefully, if he can play, that's going to be – I mean, you're bringing in an SEC caliber offensive lineman, plug and play at Syracuse, and I think you would see immediate results. To go there and service and a couple of the other guys, Dakota Davis, who went through what they saw last year, hopefully, things can get stitched together this year.
I agree with you. All right. Now we're a little too worked up, so I'm going to end it now so we don't go to other 45 minutes. Oh, well, we agree on that. It's so crazy. All right. So, Maddie, I'll see you soon. Everybody else will keep bringing you the previews. And, of course, hopefully it's all good news from here on out. But until then, we'll see you later.